Today we're going to learn how to sharpen a knife with just some sandpaper and a wooden block. Sometimes we don't have a sharpening stone, or a sharpening stone is too expensive. They can be, a really good one can be quite expensive. Here's a way to sharpen a knife without having 5 or 6 really expensive sharpening stones. So what I have here is a block of wood, right? And that's really all it is. And here I have a knife which needs to be sharpened, and here I have some sandpaper. This is rough 80 sandpaper, 80 grit, as you can see, and this is 220. And if I wanted, I could have 4 or 5 different grits of sandpaper. So going from really rough to really fine, the fine would be the black stuff. So what I do now is I just put the fold the sandpaper over top of the wooden block like that, and I can measure it out carefully. Maybe I can do that. So it's about like that, and it's about there. So I'll sort of rip it like this, roughly. It doesn't have to be too exact. And then I just sort of wrap it up like that. And now I have a sharpening stone. I try and wrap it as tightly as possible. Now I wear some gloves just to be safe. There, and now I just go like this and I just sharpen. I can either go backwards like this, forwards, which is probably the best, or I can just go around like this. And what I'm doing is there's a certain angle. You can see if it has a lot of angle, it's more for chopping, and if it has less angle, it's more for doing fine detail work. So say an X-Acto knife would have a very low angled, and an axe would have a very high angle, and there's everything in between, right? So what I'm doing now is I'm making an edge here, right? I'm shaping the edge of the blade so that when it comes time to cut, that it cuts nicely. So I use the rough sandpaper to give the edge its basic shape, and then I move down to finer and finer grits of sandpaper to get rid of the scratches, and also to make the edge sharper. The finer the sandpaper, the sharper the edge. And I'll finish off by stropping it to get rid of the metal burr. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm just sort of rubbing it like this, and I'm moving from the front to the back of the knife. And I check the knife periodically to see where I've sharpened and where I've missed. Just go like that. Right, and now I can have a look at it. Now I switch to the other side, and I do the same thing. And this rough sandpaper is easily removing the metal. So it's starting to shape the blade. If I would really do this, it would take maybe 10 or 15 minutes on each step just to get a really good edge. And when you're touching up a knife, you don't have to use the rough grit. You can just use the fine grit. You just use the rough grit when you're shaping the knife edge blade. And then later on, just for touch-ups, you can use the fine sandpaper. So that's pretty good. I'm happy with it at this stage, at the 80 grit level. Now I'm going to move on, and I'm going to do the same thing with the 220. So I'm going to sort of take my gloves off for this part. I'm going to go like that, put the edge there, wrap it around. Okay, that's about right, and that's about the edge there, right, of the piece of wood. Okay, it's about there, and I just quickly rip it like that. I missed it a little bit. That's good. Now I just take it, and I wrap it around again, nice and tight, like that. Now I'll put my gloves on. And now I'm going to do the same thing over again, right, but with the finer sandpaper. And I can I can go to the store and I can buy a variable pack of sandpaper, which will have all the sandpapers in it, for $3 or $4. If I or $5 or $6, if I went to, and had to buy a $50 or $60 sanding stone for each step, that would be pretty expensive. And this gets about the same result. There's also some sandpaper which can be used wet. That's good too. You have to put water on it. This sandpaper I just use dry because it's paper. I just keep on sharpening like that. And actually a sharp knife, if you're carving or doing any type of work, is much safer than a dull knife, because a dull knife can slip and cut you, whereas a sharp knife is much less likely to slip. It sounds paradoxical, but it's actually true. So now that imagine I spent 10 or 15 minutes working on this edge. I have a look at it. The edge looks pretty good. It looks like it removed the scratches from the ADP sandpaper, and now I could move on to even finer grit, like the black stuff, like the maybe 600 or whatever I happen to have there. And if you can sharpen a stone totally with fine grit sandpaper, it takes a very long time to do, and that's why you move from rough to fine, because a rough takes away a lot more for the same effort. And there you go. So now I would just strop it, and then I would and then my knife would be really sharp, and I could go and cut tomatoes or whatever with it. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.